Jim, no man wakes up and says, I want to destroy my marriage today. But you say that most affairs don't start with alarm bells. What do you mean by that? And how can a guy be aware of some of these warning signs if it isn't going to be loud and urgent?
Well, Satan in Genesis 3 asked a real simple question. Did God really say? And it was enough of a question to generate doubt, to generate confusion, to generate the subversiveness of leadership. And I think what we need to realize as men is that Satan is sneaky. He's a patient predator, and sin is sneaky. Sin starts as this seemingly innocuous thing and compounds over time, and then at the end of the game, it ruins your life. And so we want to have a series of non-starters in marriage. Whether you're single or married, to create a series of non-starters so that your wife always feels loved, so that your future wife feels safe even before she knows you, because you're implementing certain things in your life to be a man who is safe, who is secure, who can be a wall around those people who are going to care and depend on you.
I think most men would agree that when they take on the role of husband and provider, that they're never going to cheat. They're going to honor. There's the vows. They live by these. But you've been behind the curtains. You know the truth and reality of a lot of these marriages. What are some of those first small compromises that are leading a man down that path?
Oh man, there's multiple, but one of them is giving a compliment to a woman that would elicit an emotional response back towards you. I have 6 women that work for me, and their love languages are words of affirmation. So I will affirm them constantly and compliment them, but I give them compliments that create a response positively towards themselves and their performance, not me. For example, I would never say to a barista at Starbucks, man, your eyes look really pretty in that green apron. I would never say to my waitress, wow, you must have a great husband because you just look so well put together. I would never respond to a Facebook post or an Instagram post to another woman and give her a compliment that would create a response towards me. And I think guys do that. And I don't think, maybe sometimes it is innocuous, but I think it's nefarious. I think it's guys go out fishing, go out hunting, and they have this question, do I still have what it takes? And so it starts with that. It starts with reaching out to an ex-girlfriend through a DM. It starts with these little things. It starts with telling your best friend's wife that she could do better, or she looks pretty today. And so these things usually, most of these relationships beyond the context of marriage usually start close to home, which is why Deuteronomy 22:8 says, build guardrails around your house. Because it's those closest to us. Actually, we think it's going to be some stranger, but it's not. It's usually somebody that we know and that we're close to, or that we built a relationship with at work, or in our friend group, or in a Bible study at church, if you can believe it. And these things build and grow. And we see this right now. I'm working with 3 couples that are all Christian and all separated or getting divorced, and all of these relationships happened because of having relationships with other people that were in the context of work. Or one of them, it wasn't a work-related thing. It was just a marriage that became a partnership and wasn't a marriage because they didn't build a guardrail of connection around each other, and they got emotionally disconnected.
Yeah, it starts with that. It's not a big deal walking too close to the edge. How important, Jim, do you think it is for a guy to understand kind of the natural male wiring, and how novelty, and more importantly, sexual novelty is something that's innately wired into us? We had this conversation literally this morning inside of our community around the Coolidge effect. I don't know how much you know about the Coolidge effect, but there's a story of President Calvin Coolidge, right? Like, he's visiting a farm. Mrs. Coolidge is with him, and they're getting led through the farm by the rancher. And over at the distance, you can see typically when you have chickens, you have one rooster and many, many hens. It only takes one rooster to provide eggs for many, many hens. So Miss Coolidge is kind of her interest is piqued by what's taking place here, because this hen is kind of getting after it with all these, or one rooster is getting after it with all the hens. And she asked the rancher, hey, is this kind of normal? Like, is he able to go one after another. And she's kind of hinting that Calvin Coolidge, like, he isn't really showing up regularly in the bed. He's an older man, whatever the case is. And she says, yeah, like, he will get after it nonstop all day long. And she makes a comment, hey, let the president know about that. And immediately President Coolidge responds, same hen or different hen? And the rancher is like, different hen every single time. And what this is the novelty component. Sexual novelty is, over time we get disinterested and less turned on with the same sexual partner. But you introduce something novel, something new, whether it's through pornography, like you're saying, the barista in the coffee shop, the women in the workplace, it's new. So there's a dopamine effect. How important is it for men to understand the wiring behind this and be more intentional about, once again, having the boundaries and guardrails?
Yeah, I would say that God's original design is one hen in the hen house. So the Coolidge effect, which I don't know a lot about, I don't think that God has made men for multiple women. I think that God has made men for one woman. And because of that, we know that we live in a world that's highly sexualized. So man has to be very focused. If he wants to be a biblical man, he needs to be focused on his wife. And I'll tell you, I've been married 34 years. Our lovemaking has never been stronger. It's never been more intimate. I've never been more attracted to my bride. She's never looked more beautiful to me. And that is something that, and this is the issue I think guys have, is they say, oh, there's a lot more hens in the hen house. Oh, the grass is greener over here, but the grass is greener because it's sitting on a septic tank. Right. And so what instead of worrying about all the hens out there, and I agree with you, we are nefarious, we are sinful, we are visually oriented, we see things, we're always looking, we're hunters, we're conquerors, we're always looking for that next thing to conquer, to hunt, to look for. And I think that is true. But when I'm a Christian man married to a woman, God has said, that's your woman. Right. And so for me, the goal is not to say no to all of these other hens in the hen house. My goal is to focus on the hen that God has given me and be so deeply and intimately connected to her that these others aren't even an option. And the beautiful thing about being married to a woman is that every 28 days, her body's always changing, right? Her breasts will get bigger and hard, and then they'll be soft, and then she'll be big, she'll be soft, and then she'll be, ripped, and she'll be ready to rock and roll because she's ovulating. My wife over the last 34 years has changed. I've been married to about 20 different women. You know what I mean? And so the beauty is knowing that woman and how she's changed, and knowing when she's up and when she's down, and reading her face and knowing who she is. And so I think if a man becomes intimately attached and connected to his wife, I think even though we are sinners, and even though, we are these guys that see the other hens in the hen house, we will realize that this is the one that God has called me to, and this is the one I'm going to be faithful to. And I think what happens with men is they get into trouble and they start seeing options out there. And this book is really helping men to get rid of all those options, so that all of those potential options are all non-starters, and we're able to stay true, to our brides for a lifetime.
Yeah, it's funny because based upon the woman, right? It's not just a biological change she goes through every 28 days. It is a personality change, right? You can date 4 different women over the course of an entire month, or be married to 4 different women over the course of an entire month, right? Obviously I want to get into, some of the guardrails. I don't want to give everything away, but I want to give the guys a little bit of taste of something. But one thing I hear you kind of hinting at, right? I don't think that this is a rule book. I think it's more about a framework of embracing a new identity. That's one thing that we talk a lot about here with the Rebuild Man, is becoming a man that no longer wants, needs, or desires porn. Everything in our curriculums and everything that we coach men through is an identity transformation. How do you kind of frame or see this conversation about, like, not living by a rule book, but embracing a standard of an identity in our life, that these are just things that we don't do, and here's the things that we do?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, it's about knowing who I am. By who I am, I'm talking about how God made me. Like, I know I have this acrostic, that's the hand that God has dealt me. Moses looking at the burning bush, making excuse after excuse after excuse. God finally said to Moses, "What's in your hand?" And so I believe that I've got my history, which is my hurts, habits, and hangups. I believe I've got my abilities and talents. This isn't in the book, by the way. I believe I've got my natural temperament. D, I believe I've got my desires and passions. And S, I believe I've got my spiritual gifts. So when I think of who I am, those 5 things describe and define how I'm unique from all of creation. But then the bigger question is, not only do I need to know who I am, I need to know am I a Christian, or am I really radically sold out to Jesus Christ? One of the things I've learned is that Christianity will work to get you into heaven, but it won't work to keep you out of hell on earth unless you are all in. Christianity is an you got to be all in to make your faith on earth work. So for me, I know who I am. I know I know my history. I know my abilities. I know my natural temperament. I know my desires. I know my spiritual gifts. But I also know, Frank, I know whose I am. I'm a child of the King. I'm a son of God. I am an heir to the throne. I mean, I know whose father I have. I know when I pray, "Our Father in heaven," who I am praying to. And because I know whose I am, I can fully embrace who I am. And who I am, in the context of whose I am, directs my choices most of the time. I'd like to say I'm perfect. I'm not. But I mean, most of the time, that directs my choice, because I know I want to please my Father, because he's a good father. He has the best for me. And the best for me, according to the word of God, is to be married to one woman all my life. And we know statistically, it's really funny. USA Today, I think it was, or something like that, years ago did a survey on the most sexually satisfied relationships. And they found that it was religious, church-going couples. And that tells us that, hey, God's plan is a good plan. He knows. I had a situation about 3 or 4 years ago. I had a guy tell me he was bragging about his sex life, about my age, and in and out of drug rehab all his life. And I think he just got his license finally after 40 years of not having it because he had so many DUIs. He said, I've had sex with 200 women. And I said, wow, that's awesome. I've had sex with the same woman 2,000 times. And he went, oh, you win. I go, I know I win because I've got a PhD in her. You know what I mean? I've got a PhD. I'm not some, middle school kid trying to feel my way through the dark. And so, I mean, God's plan is the best plan. And I know who I am, and I know whose I am. And I'm absolutely sold on those two things. And those really drive my life. And so the question when we talk about identity, Frank, is what drives my life? Is it the world's view of me? Is it culture's view? Do I wrap my identity up in my career? You know this. A lot of guys just say, "Oh, I'm a porn addict." Okay, I hear that statement, but that's not who you are. That is the sin that you struggle with. Who you are is you are a son of God. You are a child of the King. God has given you these things. So to wrap yourself in this identity, to me, is saying, I don't believe God can bring me freedom. And so I want to really encourage all the guys listening, man, you need to know who you are, and you need to know whose you are. And in the midst of an addiction or a struggle, those are addictions or struggles. Those do not define who you are and whose you are.
It's definitely not your identity. And Jim, this is stuff I wanted to get you, man. You said this is not in the book, right? Obviously, I want to direct everybody to go grab a copy. We'll have it linked down there for you guys below, but they can read the book and extract everything. I want to get to more the meatier stuff.
Yeah, this is all outside the book.
So, you told me prior to us jumping on recording that this was a book that really a practice that you began to live an identity as a single man. That was 30 plus years ago. What prompted you to put it into a book today, though? Like, how did single Jim of 30 years live this out for the last 30 years in a successful marriage? And what was the reason behind writing it now?
Yeah, I brought a sexual history into my marriage. I brought, back then, pornography you had to work hard to get pornography. You had to go buy a magazine or, rip it off your stepdad out of his closet, which we did, or go to a video store and do the walk of shame, type of thing. And so I had a sexual history with live women in the room, or without, with paper women or digital, type of thing, or video women. It's different now, right? But when I gave my life to Christ, I never touched a woman for 3 years. I was a college full ride scholarship college football athlete. I never touched a woman. My wife is the only woman I've ever touched as a Christian. But when I was 24 years old, would have been 2 years before I met Shanna, I was at I worked for Campus Life, a Youth for Christ Campus Life. And I was at one of our meetings. I was running the meeting. I was a single guy. I just got done playing college football. I'm rocking about 8% body fat. And I had this gal walk up to me. She was 18. She was the same age of the same age difference that me and my bride are today. So she walked up to me. I was not attracted to her. I wasn't thinking anything nefarious. I was completely innocent, but she walked up to me and she said something that scared me. She said, I only come here to stare at your body. And that was an invitation, right? And I didn't know how to handle that. I wasn't attracted to her. It wasn't even on the radar, but I went back to my boss and I said, hey man, this happened. I don't know what to do. And so he began establishing, hey, you're never alone with a woman. You don't ever take these girls out for a coffee or lunch to minister to them. Don't ever, when you're dropping kids off after club is done, don't ever drop the women off last. Don't ever say these things. So he began to give me this list. And so I began as a single man building what I call today guardrails in my life. And Frank, here's the reason why. Well, first of all, I know whose I am and I know who I am. But the other reason is I wanted to deserve the bride I desired. And I have a chapter in here. It's right in the middle of our 10 guardrails. It's a chapter for the single men. And the key for me was I wanted to deserve the bride I desire. And then for married men, as a married man now, I want to deserve the bride I decided. So I want an unbreakable marriage. And that is me making a decision that I'm going to deserve. I've got a wonderful, wonderful, godly woman, beautiful. I want to deserve her, right? When I was a single man praying for my wife, I prayed for my wife for 3 years. I didn't even know who she was. I just prayed for her because I was committed to deserve her when I did see her. And that's really, for me, when I wrote Guardrails, it really was written from the perspective, even though the book is written for married men, it's written from the perspective of a single man. And this book has it's really been my compass for a successful marriage. And when I built these guardrails as a single man, it was what I would never do. But when we wrote this book, we flipped each one. We flipped the script. Every guardrail is something positive to do. So it was really a fun book. It's a very easy reading book.
Yeah, and that makes it less demeaning to men. I don't know if demeaning would be the right word there, right? But they're constantly told that they're doing things wrong, how not to do things. I think positioning it as this is a way to live this out, from a positive lens, I think makes it much more enjoyable of a read. It's interesting when you say, I wanted to become the man deserving of the wife that I desired. It reminded me of something that I heard Jordan Peterson say about 4 years ago when he was doing one of his Q&A sessions. He was asked, how do I find the right partner? His immediate response was, you must ask a better question. It's not about how do you find the right person. It's how do you become the person that is worthy of that person that you're looking for. It's exactly what you just said there. And this is the language that we try to give to our men that are single and are struggling and are maybe not feeling worthy of it and are using porn as a crutch right now because they don't have a relationship. You're never going to find the woman in your life when you're worshiping other women on a screen, right? So you got to cut that out and then set your attention on becoming that person and then present him to the world. And trust me, when you do that, you attract the right things into your life. So I love all that. I want to talk to maybe the married men though right now, because I think a lot of guys are going to pick this book up, haven't had these guardrails in their life, and it's led to having some negative effects in their marriage. How does somebody that is struggling in marriage right now because they haven't had guardrails and boundaries, there's a disconnect emotionally, spiritually, physically, intimately in the relationship, how do they begin to practice these things and invite the woman on board with them as well? Because I know your wife wrote some sections of the book to bring the women on board with this as well. So if you're disconnected in the relationship already, how does this process even begin?
Yeah. Well, you quoted Jordan Peterson. So let's quote Jordan Peterson again. Jordan Peterson said something I'd never heard before. He said, the human species is the only species in all of creation. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, so I would argue, and Sasquatch. So We are the only human species that God has designed to walk upright with our sex organs on full display. So there's no other animal that walks fully upright. But what shame does is shame causes us to cover, right? It caused Adam and Eve in the garden. They sinned and they covered fig leaves, right? And so my role as a husband who wants a thriving marriage is I want to walk upright on full display, right? And so that means for me, this is really important for you men listening to hear. If you're overwhelmed with these guardrails, you just have to start with guardrail 1. The chapter is called Live Above Reproach. I unpacked the Greek word anapolepnos. It's the word that's translated to be above reproach in 1 Timothy 3, 4 and 5, and Titus 1, 6. And this word anapolepnos, it literally means to leave nothing to lay hold of. So when I read that, I thought of a shoestring. It literally means to leave nothing dangling, an untied shoelace that the enemy could grab and trip you up, right? So the first thing that I would tell a guy to do is to read that chapter and stop and ask this question: are there any loose shoestrings in my life right now that could ruin my marriage? Are there any loose shoestrings in my single life right now that would prohibit or prevent me from marrying the woman I desire? A pornography addiction is a loose shoestring, right? We need to work on that. Or maybe it's not pornography. Maybe it's I'm a Christian guy who's not involved in the church. Maybe it's I'm not a giver, or I don't have a good, I've got a job that's leading me nowhere, or, I don't know what it's going to be for that guy, but, for the married guys, it's asking the question, hey, what is that one thing? And then I would just say, get to work on that one thing. A lot of guys, what happens is we shame them into and overwhelm them with this massive list of things. And let's just start with the most important thing: the man. Fix the man. If you fix the man, if the man can tie that one shoelace, he will position himself to deserve the woman that he's with or the woman he's praying for.
Extreme ownership, taking responsibility for the role that you've played. Once again, quoting Jordan Peterson.
Well, that was actually Jocko Willink.
Yeah, but Jordan Peterson's got a quote of saying, "Clean up your own house before you go out and try to change the world." And it is a lesson in taking care of home base first, right? So one thing you've talked a lot about here, Jim, is feeling the attraction and desire for your wife 35 years stronger than ever before. If I could ask you something maybe personally and intimate here, like what have you been intentional about doing, whether it's weekly, daily, monthly? Like how have you remained that level of desire and attraction with a wife that, for lack of a better saying, maybe doesn't look exactly the way that she did 30 plus years ago, right? So what's been
None of them do. None of them do. So yeah, I had in 2009, I had an experience that altered my marriage forever. My wife we were working 2 jobs each. She was working 3, trying to make ends meet, being in full-time ministry. She was counseling a pastor's wife who was leaving her husband. And she got to a point, she was overwhelmed. She said, "Hey, we need help. I'm just really struggling right now. I'm not feeling connected. I'm feeling overwhelmed." And I blew her off. And I blew her off for probably 6 months. And so finally in 2009, so this is 17 years ago. Finally, I said, okay, let's go see one of the staff at our church was a woman. I said, let's go see her. She had, for her master's program, made this marriage survey. So I said, let's go take the marriage survey and see what happens. So we took the marriage survey. I scored an 89 out of 100. 89. I'm like, yeah, we're awesome. My wife scored a 32. And I remember I looked at my wife and I said, whatever I need to do to fix this, I will do it. And this is when I learned something, Frank, that the men we have to as men understand this. I have a superpower. You have a superpower. Our superpower is, and this is something that men have across the board. Women don't have this superpower. I am a thermostat, baby. Like, when it comes to things, I'm the fixer. I'm the regulator. If, it's like MC Hammer, you got a job. Vanilla Ice, you got a job. I'll solve it. I mean, that's what we do. We are thermostats. Here's the problem. we are hamstrung. Our Achilles heel is we don't know how to test the temperature so that we can fix it. Women, their superpower is they are thermometers. They have the supernatural ability to determine the temperature, the health of relationships. So the first thing that I do this at least once a month with Shanna. Honey, 1 to 10, where are we? Or 1 to 100, where are we? I just give her, hey, give us a ranking. And then she gives us a ranking, and I say, well, why did you give us that ranking? Right? So then once she gives me her thermometer, now I kick in as a thermostat, and I go in and I regulate. And so this has been our go-to for almost 20 years now, where I will ask her, hey, what's going on? How we doing, baby? And she'll tell me. And then I go in and fix it. And so this is how we have stayed deeply connected. And another thing about that is when you're asking that question, you don't allow years of bitterness and disconnect. You know, I have a friend of mine, they've been married 30 years. They're Christians. She's in the worship band. They've been separated for 6 months. And I asked him, bro, what happened? He said, we've just been roommates for the last 20 years. And I said to him, I didn't say it because he was hurting, but I want to say, bro, that's your fault. Like, that's your fault. Your job is, you're a fixer. You're not a thermometer. As the thermostat, you need to ask the thermometer how it's going. And you didn't ask that. And now here you are, the broken marriage that may be broken beyond repair. And so to me, that's what I do. I recognize her superpower as a thermometer, and I embrace my superpower as a thermostat.
Yeah, I love that. And guys, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge we had a first ever on the podcast here. We've quoted Jordan Peterson over the years, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of times. This is the first episode where we've ever had a Vanilla Ice quote. So let's mark this asterisk. Let's send it to Guinness Book of World Records for the Vanilla Ice quote here from Jim, just showing a little bit of his age, but I love it. I want to dive into some of the guardrails in the book. You talked about guardrail number 1, live above reproach. One of the ones that I think is, I don't know if they're more important than other ones, but one that really stood out to me was guardrail 4, frame your bride well. I think that this is something that people passively and don't even intentionally do in social circles and public settings, even sometimes on social media. You see both men and women disrespecting, not from a place of like it's directed at them, but it's done in a jokingly manner, right? Talk about framing your bride well, the importance of it. What does it mean? The frame to us, the frame to her, the frame to the public, the frame to the family. Let's unpack that one a little bit, because I think it's so important, because over time, this can be the thing that really begins to separate people.
So this chapter was the easiest and the hardest chapter to write. And then the one before that, Guardrails 3, is the one part of the book that gave back to me. So Guardrails 3 is, every time you write a book, the book gives back to you. So Guardrail 3 gave back to me. Guardrail 4 was my easiest and most difficult, because for 25 years, the first 20 years of our marriage, probably, I cheated on my wife. So when you look at this book, you're like, wait, what? Wait, I'm confused. You said you didn't cheat on your wife. Well, I'm telling you, I was unfaithful to Shanna. I never was sexually unfaithful to her. I've never been with another woman, but for 25 years, I framed her poorly to our inner circle. I framed her as a crazy mom who cares too much about being neat around the house to my sons. I framed her as this crazy woman to my parents. And so what I like to tell guys is, your bride is a picture. She's a picture that you are painting. So what you are portraying an image of her to the world, right? Now that image can be either accurate or inaccurate. I call that framing. So every time I talk about Shanna, I am painting a brushstroke. I'm giving you an image of my bride, right? Which is why I call her my bride, not my wife, because the image I want to paint is this beautiful 22-year-old. I want to see her as the woman I covenanted with all those years. So the problem when we frame our wives well, right? We walk into work, the secretary greets us. How you doing, sir? Or how you doing, Frank? How you doing, Jim? Yeah, I had a fight with my wife. Man, she's just so nitpicky. I mean, I feel like I'm dragging her around all my life. And that we don't know what that woman is going through. whether she's a grocery store clerk, a barista at the coffee shop, she works for you, she's your best friend's wife. We don't know what she is going through. So the moment we frame our wife negatively, I've seen this happen over and over again. All she has to do is say this statement: well, if I was your man, I would treat you like the catch that you are. So I negatively frame my wife to a female, not knowing her story. She reciprocates with some kind of compliment to me that elicits an emotional response towards her, and the adultery train is rolling. And so it's very careful. Like, I do think it is important that we have men in our lives that we can share truthfully about our bride and our struggles, people who are committed to our marriage and not choosing sides. So I need to have guys that are committed to the marriage and not choosing sides. But besides that very small group of one or two men, I need to frame my bride positively to the world, because they are going to view. And then here's the other thing, Frank. I need to as the husband and the protector of my bride, I need to dispel the lies that she believes. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, qualified enough. And my wife is 56 years old. So I get these I'm not enough statements all the time. My body's changed. I'm this, my wrinkles, blah, blah, blah. And my job is to dispel the lies and speak the truth. Oh, baby, you're more beautiful than any. I mean, man, when you walk into at 56, you turn heads. You put that bikini on the beach and walk down the beach, you're still rocking it. I mean, you rock it, baby. I do that when we're lovemaking. I'm just telling her that all the time. You're beautiful. You're glorious. I like to tell her she's glorious. I don't know why, but you're glorious. You're beautiful. Just affirming and dispelling the lies she's believing so that I can frame her accurately, not only to her, but to the world. And when men fail to do this, they're setting their marriage up for disaster, or at the very least, a mundane marriage that's stuck in a rut, that you don't desire each other sexually. My wife and I, I'm 60 now and she's 56. And I wish guys would tell the younger guys this, like, sex changes as you get older. And so we're at the point, and like, if we don't like make love once a week, we'll forget about it. So we go, hey, we've committed together. We're going to make love once a week. We're just going to do it every week. And so we both have committed to that. And the reason why is this: because love making is such an intimate connection. Even if you don't desire it, it's important that we connect intimately. And that's where I do a lot of my positive framing to my wife, and the things that she believes is in that process. So it's funny how much things change as you get older. But anyway, the framing should never change.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Jim. This part of the conversation reminds me of one that I had years ago with my great friend Tony DiLorenza. Runs One Extraordinary Marriage with his wife Alicia. They wrote a book called The Six Pillars of Intimacy. And Tony admittedly struggled with a pornography addiction about 18, 19 years ago. It caused a lot of issues within their marriage. They fought through that. They obviously got on the other side of it. Now they run a very successful ministry and coaching practice, helping couples build an extraordinary marriage in their language. One thing Tony is very intentional about doing is when he talks about his wife, Alicia, his bride, Alicia, he precedes her name with the word beautiful, whether he's telling a story about them together, whether he's introducing her at an event or on their show. It's always, meet my beautiful wife, Alicia. I'd like to tell you the story about me and my beautiful wife, Alicia. And I remember when I asked him why he did that, he said because there caused some issues, obviously, of trust within their relationship. So he needed to reconfirm her. He needed to confirm the frame to others, but he also was doing it for himself, because now when he thinks of Alicia, she's the standard of beauty, right? So he's almost programming and wiring his own subconscious from these positive lens. And I think that's an important part of this framing piece as well. If you're always talking negatively about your wife, you're programming your subconscious. So now when just you're kind of like emotionally at your wit's end, or you're just kind of stressful, that's what's going to burst out, because that's what you've been programming yourself about who your wife is. So I think that there's a deeper psychological part that's important for men to frame their wives to themselves positively.
Well, here's the other thing, Frank. The Bible says that the glory, this is so, you almost pass over it in 1 Corinthians. The glory of a man is his wife. So in other words, I can tell how well a man treats I can tell the quality of a man by how his wife looks to me. Now, let me just tell you this. We all get wrinkly. We all get old. We all die eventually. But when I look at a woman, so I've never met a man who married an ugly woman. Now, they may not be attractive to me, but I've never met a man go, man, I just picked the ugliest one in the hen house and grabbed her and she's mine. Nobody's ever done that. Everybody who marries a woman marries one that's beautiful, right? But the problem is, over the course of a lifetime, how you have framed her and how you have treated her shows up in, are her eyes haggard? Are they tired? Are they worn out? Is she frumpy? Does she not carry herself, with dignity? I can tell how well a man has framed his bride by how she looks. And she can walk in the room, and man, I'll tell you what, I've been so disheartened to see pastors of very large churches and their wives walk in. I'm like, you're married to her? Like, you must not be, and so for us as men, we have to be very, very careful to frame our brides in a way that they will be dignified, that they will see their beauty, that they will have their insecurities dispelled, the lies they believe will be cast into the pit of hell. It's our job, because she represents me and represents the quality of a man. When my wife walks in the room, you would go, whoa, that's a woman. She is alive, fully alive. And there's beauty in seeing that. I was at the gym about, 4 months ago, and there's this lady there. She's 90 years old. She's heavy. She's not in good shape, but she starts engaging me in conversation because I had a hip surgery and her brother was getting hip surgery. And I'm talking to this woman going, okay, this woman is loved by a man who treats her well. She looks all of 90, bro. But I'm going, okay, but there's a beauty in her eyes from a man who's treated her well.
That goes both ways. She's a representation of you. You're a representation of her. And a lot of guys miss this part. It's like, you presented yourself as one person early on, and that's what won her over. And then 10 years later, like, you're a shell of yourself. Like, you're not taking care of your physical health. You're not putting, unwrinkled clothes on when you go out. You got, Crocs on when you go to church. It's like, dude, you are representing your wife everywhere you go. Be a man of value and strong representation. That's why your wife looks that way, because when I see you, that's what you're presenting to the world. Is like, here's Jim, 6 years old, still crushing it, get after in the gym, strong, not buttoned up tight, but it's like your clothes are well fitting and put together. It's like, you are somebody that she is proud to stand next to her and show to the world.
Well, so it's really interesting. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, it says, two are better than one, for they have a return on their work. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken, right? Well, this is in the context of marriage, the 3 strands, husband, wife, and Jesus, right? So this is really critical. If I'm here and Shanna's here and Jesus is here, it's an equilateral triangle. We are journeying together towards Jesus. And as the more we climb, the closer we get to each other. And so the key with me and my bride is to travel the same race, Christian, at the same pace, in the same direction. So we're going same race, same pace, same direction. And look what happens to us. We get closer to each other as we get closer to Jesus. And so this is the issue. We need to, if a guy's let himself go and the woman's beautiful, or vice versa, that tells me this couple's not traveling in the same direction. And we have to be in the same race, the same pace, and the same direction. And if we can do that, it makes for a beautiful marriage, a beautiful life. So when a man goes off the rails and gets addicted to pornography, he's changed directions, right? Or a woman, goes off and she becomes a shopaholic, whatever it is, we need to be careful, which is why the thermostat analogy is so powerful, to make sure that we're in the same race, at the same pace, in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, guys, there's 10 guardrails unpacked in the book. We have it linked down there in the show notes for you guys to grab a copy. One of the ones that I've had to be intentional about in the last 6 years since, publicly going online with this work and being a voice for anti-porn and helping men is Guardrail 6, only counseling men. Jim, I get every week, wives, girlfriends, reaching out to me, seeking help. And I have to make sure that I'm very clear that my job is to help and serve the men, give advice in whatever capacity I can. That's why we have resources that we direct them to. But I've even had women come up to me like in the gym once they find out what I'm doing, and they will just unload every. Trust me, I'm sure you get the same thing. Like women have zero filters when they feel safe around a man. I've heard more than I need to ever know about certain people's relationships with their husbands. But once again, I was very intentional from the beginning. It's like, I'm not going to do any type of counseling here. I'm going to cut it off. This is not what I do. I appreciate that you feel safe around me, but we're not going to go further with this conversation. Talk about the importance of Guardrail 6 here, only counseling men.
Yeah. So I work with 6 women. On my team, I have 6 women, and men, but 6 women. And so the issue with these women is they deserve the same training. They deserve equal attention to their job, right? So I just want to be careful because I get this all the time from women. Oh, what are you, a misogynist? What are you not going to let me have? I can't. My career, my number one, my right hand man is a woman. My number 2 is a woman. I've got I've got women at high levels here because I don't care what gender you are. I just need the job to get done. But when it comes to, and they're out of the area, so it's not like a live woman in the room. But when it comes to career training, hey, I'm good to go. But when it comes to life coaching and counseling and things beyond the workplace, I am not your guy. I'm not going to go there because what happens is in the psychological world, we know this phrase called projection. Projection is them projecting something on you. And so this happens all the time, especially if they are married to a train wreck and they're getting counsel for a man who's got it all together. We're just opening our door to build an emotional connection with the opposite sex. And I will meet with a woman one time. If a woman has they want to talk or something, I'll open door, open window. You get one meeting, make it a good one, and that's it. One and done. I don't coach. I don't do counseling. I don't do any of those things because here's why. I've had people say this. Well, don't you care about me? Well, or don't you care about women? Well, I mean, yeah, but I care about my wife way more. Like what my wife thinks of me is 100x more important than what you think of me. So at the end of the day, you think I'm a misogynist. My wife thinks I'm the love of her life. That's a win for me. I am not going to go there. I'm not going to cross that bridge. And I have a friend who's the vice president of one of the biggest insurance companies in the country, and he operates by those guardrails. I have another friend who just got inducted into the 49ers Hall of Fame. He's one of my board members. He lived by those guardrails. Yes, because I can hear the guys right now telling me, you can't be done. It can't be done. Bro, yes, it can. Yeah, you've got to ask yourself what's more important, how other women think of you or how your bride thinks of you. We just have to. And the hard part with being a dynamic guy like you are, Frank, that's going to be appealing to other women. So you've got to build your guardrails even higher, right? So I think the bottom line is this. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm capable of. The question for your listeners is, do you guys know what you're capable of? And here's the other part that's sketchy. Let's say I walked into a restaurant, Frank, and you're in there, and I see your face when I walk in, right? You're that awesome mustache you're rocking, right? I see you back in the back of the room, and I see a woman talking to you. She's at the table with you, and she's got her back to me. And I could tell by her back and her hair, she's probably a beautiful woman. So now I've opened up a story loop because I noticed her hair is not the same color as your wife's hair. So now I see you in a restaurant. You've got the mustache. The mustache pulls. It just naturally pulls. Can't help yourself. You've got this woman at the table with you. Her hair is not the same color as your wife. So I know you're with another woman. Now I open up a whole story loop. Because perception is reality. Now, what I don't know is that that's your daughter. That's your teenage daughter. I don't know that, but I'm just drawing conclusions, right? And so we just need to realize that people are watching our lives and they're going to draw conclusions based on what they say. And you may be in public, doing something. I mean, I don't know why a man would ever be in public with another woman unless it's a relative. I don't know why that would ever be. I just will never agree with that. But let's say you're on an innocent after work party with, you and a woman and another coworker, and the coworker goes to the bathroom. So now it's just you and that woman for 5 minutes. You can open a story loop there. Well, here's an example. How about Bathsheba, or how about the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, right? That interaction with the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, do you realize that 3,000 years later, there's 3 stories around that interaction? Did you know this biblically? One is that she had a baby, and she went back to Ethiopia. And to this day, every king of Ethiopia is in the lineage of her. Her name was Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, and King Solomon. The other one is Origen, one of our church fathers, believed that she is the dark woman in the Song of Solomon that he's writing to. The other story loop is there is a group of Jewish scholars that believe that she got pregnant, because it says it says there that he gave her all she desired, and they believe that was a baby. She took that baby, went back to Ethiopia. That baby, 400 years later, the direct lineage of that baby was a guy named Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the temple in 520 BC that Solomon built. So here's my deal. I'm not saying any of these are true, but I'm saying these are 3 stories to this day still going, all because a guy brought a woman into his inner council for 6 months and allowed her to sit at his feet.
Wow. It's interesting. You talked about your 2 close friends there, the big insurance executive and the NFL, the 49er, right? I think one thing that I started talking about this work 2019. I got on the other side of my porn addiction. Jim, I was a very successful business owner. I competed in bodybuilding at moderately high level. I thought I was a rare case of a guy that kind of had it all together on the outside, but lived a secret life behind closed doors. And then I started talking about it publicly, and I realized, actually, no, the majority of the guys that we tend to work with are winning on the outside, are crushing it, are running the business, are sitting in the boardroom meetings, are speaking from the stage, right? And because they don't feel they have a place to go. And I think obviously that's why we've created and we've been successful, and what you provide with the men in the arena. I would say that probably, Jim, I don't know if you thought about this. You wrote this book, it sounds like, for that guy that is crushing it, not the one that doesn't have anything going on. And I love those guys. I want to lift them up there as well. But this is really for the guy that is winning on paper, but struggling behind closed doors. Would you agree?
That book is 100% written for that guy. The guy that we target is our guy in the stress bubble. So he's 30 to 55. He has kids in the home. He calls himself a Christian. He's educated up to a PhD, at least through high school. He's into health. He's into fitness. He's an attractive man. He's a successful man. That's our target. Because what I have found is these guys living in the suburbia world, these guys that are crushing it, these guys, because there's so much at stake with their career, they go deeper into their secrets. And the problem with your secrets is they're in the darkness. And I'm not saying not to struggle, because I believe part of discipleship is to struggle. Like, the struggle tells me that you are a disciple of Jesus, right? I used to celebrate pornography. I used to celebrate betting women. But when I became a believer, now I struggle to overcome those. And I still struggle to overcome lust. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, those are still struggles, but I'm in the struggle. The problem with a man who's holding secrets because he's afraid of being found out is he keeps these things in the dark. And so he may struggle, but nobody's struggling with him. And you need to have, honestly, I don't help guys with porn problems. I send them to guys like you, because I don't have that training, right? Right. So we need to have guys in our lives that can help us tie a shoelace that we can't reach. In fact, funny story, I was speaking to 250 men this weekend, and I'm doing that message about the loose shoestring, and I have my shoestring untied the whole time. Not one of those 250 men said anything on purpose. And not one of those men told me to tie my shoelace. But here's the funny thing, Frank. I had a hip replacement surgery 2 months ago, 2 months and 2 weeks to this day, and I can't reach over and tie the shoe. So I had to have the pastor come down and tie my shoe for me in front of 250 guys. And it's an illustration that sometimes you can't tie your own shoelace. You need help to heal so you can get to a point where you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys, and that can start with grabbing a copy of the book. Once again, it's linked down there in the show notes below. Check out Jim's ministry, Men in the Arena. We'll have all the information. I know you got small groups all across the country. And for guys that want to start something, I know there's a place for them to do that with you guys there as well. I'm curious because there's 10 in the book. In writing, I know sometimes you got to cut some stuff out. Was there a guardrail that didn't make it into the book?
No, but I had 2 sections cut out of the book without me knowing that really deeply impacted me. And they're going to put them back in when we get to 12,000 copies sold, which we're well on the way right now. But one of them, your guys will really relate to. Can I share it? This isn't in the book. It got cut out. It's going back in the book. So in the book, I talk about handling women with care. In other words, how do you touch other women? Like, I only side hug women. I only side hug women because we were having a Bible study, and one of my buddies' wife went to say goodbye. She's a bigger girl. I'm not attracted to her, but she came in. I tried to side hug her. She came in full frontal. And I remember just for a millisecond going, man, those are like the size of watermelons. Oh my gosh, they're so big. And I remember telling my wife, I had to confess to my wife, hey, honey, I remember when I gave so-and-so a hug, she goes, no, I don't remember that. I said, well, you know how the Bible says that your breast satisfied me always? She goes, yeah. I said, well, last night her breast satisfied me. And I had to confess it to her husband. But here's the part that got left out of the book. In the Bible, we are called to worship El Shaddai. Okay? So the root of El Shaddai is the Hebrew shad. The Hebrew shad is the Hebrew word for breast. Breasts is Shaddaiim. So Shaddaiim is breasts, and Shaddai is the God Almighty. In the Akkadian language, which is before Hebrew, it can also be translated the God of the mountains. So you can see where you get this breast thing, right? And there are a lot of Christian authors. There are several Christian authors out there, very popular ones, that believe that Shaddaiim or El Shaddai means the God of breasts, or the mother side of God, which, by the way, I totally disagree with that. Here's why I disagree. God has never called a woman in the Bible. Jesus was a man. So to say this is, now I know we can't put a gender on God because God is all things, but in the Bible, God is always a man. But I believe this, and this is key for your guys. I believe that we are called to worship El Shaddai, God Almighty. But we as men have a tendency, I would argue, a propensity to worship El Shaddaiim, the female form. So God is saying, I want you to worship me, but we spend more time worshiping and pursuing the female form, which is why your ministry exists, right? We spend more time pursuing the female form and in its images and whatever, instead of worshiping God Almighty. And so what God is saying here is, I don't touch women in their, don't touch their hair. I don't touch their faces. I don't front hug them, because I have a propensity to worship Shaddaiim. But God has called me to worship El Shaddai. So that's my argument in the book, and they took it out. So they're going to put it back in, but they argued that it's theologically not a mainstream argument. And I said, I don't care. It's the truth. We as men struggle to walk in sexual purity. And we often, a guy with a porn addiction is pursuing sexual things more than he's pursuing God. And I would argue he worships it.
It's worship. It's pedestalized. It's outside of you. There's even genres that are labeled worship, right? Certain body part worship, like it's right there in the genre.
So that's my argument in the book, and that's why I'm like, but our call as godly men is to worship El Shaddai and to focus on him and not Shaddaiim.
Yeah, I want to ask you something specific about that story, though, if I can, Jim. Before, guys, 12,000 copies. We've got to help Jim get there. So make sure to grab a couple, give some of these away to the guys within your group so we can get that put back in, because it's obviously a much needed part. You confessed it to your wife. You also said you confessed it to her husband.
Yeah, he was a dear friend of mine.
Okay, so he's good friend, somebody you.
Yeah, he just laughed and said they have that effect on me too. but my thing was this, man. She was completely innocent. God bless her. I mean, God gave them to her. She can't help her breasts, but she gave me a full frontal hug. She was innocent because women don't tend to worship the male form. They think it's gross. They don't worship the male form like we worship the female form. And so for her, she was innocent. But for me, in that second, when her breasts expanded into mine, right? I was like enamored. It was a millisecond, Frank. It was a millisecond, but it was enough for me to go, whoa,
But no, I think that's important for the guys to hear because, you know, the ones that are struggling, like they would even see themselves with that thought as something is wrong with me and it's shameful and it creates the secret. But hearing it from somebody that is leading an organization as large as yours has the impact that, hey, I'm still wrestling with the things and look at how I'm able to joke about it, right? Because I think once you can joke about your secrets, then they no longer have any real control and power.
We have to bring them in the light. I mean, honestly, there is no shame in your sin. The shame is in hiding your sin. We all are sinners. We all struggle. We all struggle at different things. But the key is we have to bring it. When you bring it into the light dispels the darkness. It loses its power.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Jim, we'll wrap it up here in a second. Obviously, guys, make sure to go pick up a copy of Guardrails, 10 Boundaries for an Unbreakable Marriage. Link down there. We got to help Jim get to 12,000 copies so it gets all the content added back in. Check out his Instagram page, puts out incredible content. His Men in the Arena ministry. We'll have all the links plugged down there in the show notes. Jim, what did I ask you here today that you want to make sure that guys know about the book or what they can expect in picking it up and grabbing a copy?
You know what I would just say, Frank? Probably the first chapter is the most important, or the first guardrail, and the last guardrail is the most important. And that is, I unpack a Greek word, proistemi, and the chapter is to build a wall around your bride. And the word proistemi means to preside, to protect, and provide. And if we look at the image of a house, we are to preside over our wives and give them a covering. We are to protect around them and to not allow interlopers or other influences to come in. And inside of that bedroom where her heart dwells, we need to provide a nurture and safety and security for that heart. And I think if a man is inspecting the walls, this is the critical thing. I want to encourage you guys to inspect your roof, your walls, and inspect the bedroom and make sure that there are no breaches in your wife's walls. If you can inspect her walls regularly, rely on her as the thermometer to tell you where she's hurting, it will change your marriage forever. So read the first guardrail and the last guardrail. And if you think those don't suck, read the ones in between.
Love it. Love it. Guys, pick up a copy. Jim, I asked you this question over 4 years ago, which, by the way, guys, if you didn't listen to episode 153 when we had Jim on the first time, that's linked down there for you as well. 5 essential traits of every strong man. But we love to end every conversation here with the same and final question. Our show is called The Superhuman Life. It's been a journey that I've been on of uncovering this and unpacking it and defining it in my own life. But Jim, as we wrap up today's conversation, how would you, the founder and leader of Men in the Arena movement, define living a superhuman life?
Oh, wow. I remember you asked me that question last time. How would I define living a superhuman life? Here's how I would define it. Well, not define it, but here's what I would say. You are never more of a man than the day you radically commit your life to Jesus Christ. Listen, Jesus won't make you less of a man. Jesus makes you more of a man than you ever could be without him. So I would say this. If you want to become a superhuman, rely on the only one that was never created, the Lord Jesus Christ, and trust him to make you your best version.
Amen. Nothing to add there. No, that's, yeah.
Pretty simple.
Simple, difficult in action sometimes, right? But he does change you and change everything about who you are. So I love that. Jim, once again, man, I appreciate all the work. Thank you for writing this book for the men out there. So needed. Guys, Guardrails, pick up a copy down there below. Rate, review, more importantly, share this conversation with at least one brother, guys. If every single one of you listening right now, we would literally double our audience if every single one of you shared it with just one guy inside of your men's group. So do us that favor so we can continue to get this message out there and grow this movement and support Jim and all the amazing work that he's doing. Jim, like I said, man, we got to make this more regular. We'll have you back on here very, very soon.
Thanks,
hopefully.
brother.
Yep. Talk to you guys soon. Love you guys.